Come on! All right. Welcome, Sam Buckman, to the podcast. Sam, what's going
That's
on, my
me.
guy?
Nothing much. How about you? Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, for sure. Mostly just doing a podcast at this point. That's been kind of my big, my big development here. How about you? I saw you competing in Huntington the other weekend. How was that?
Oh, it was a great time. We had a good pool, but lost in the first round to Mr. Caradona,
Mm,
but it happens.
yeah, no, sometimes it's just like that. There's so many killers out there now. I mean, I'm sure you know better than anyone else.
Oh yeah. I
Mm.
can't hang with Jordan. There's no way. But the next weekend, me and Jacob won in New Mexico.
Oh, all right. How's the New Mexico scene looking right now? Because I was talking to someone out there, I don't know, about 2 years ago, and he looked like he was getting some stuff going. He seemed like he was like into like graphic design or something like that. Like all of
Hmm.
his like tournament stuff like looked great. It was
Yeah.
like it had like a theme to it and stuff like that. I was like, oh shoot, this guy looks like he's doing something. How's all that been?
Yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, I was really surprised. I've never been to New Mexico for a tournament before, and yeah, the people are all super fun, and I can tell they're kind of still in the growing phase right now
Mm-hmm.
in their roundnet like club scene. Whereas California has kind of been like there for a while.
Right.
The skill kind of doesn't really fluctuate. They're still in the rapid development phase, so sweet to see. Yeah, great to meet a ton of awesome people. Yeah, it was honestly a really fun tournament, so it's cool.
Cool. What's their vibe out there? Like how competitive are they kind of looking like they might get?
There was definitely a lot of people there who I would say were like high advanced who are looking to make the premier jump. Um, yeah, I know premier is gonna or advanced is gonna be loaded next year, so
Right.
yeah, no, but I definitely see some premier players coming in over the next year.
All
So
right, good to see the Southwest coming on the map, man. And plus, we just
yeah,
need more people in that area. There's like a little bit in Arizona, but my parents just retired down there, so I'm looking for more things out in that area so that I can go visit and just have a place to stay and go explore that whole area. It's like part of the country that I find like so beautiful, and I've done almost nothing there. So I'm excited about all of that as well. What's been your life? What's been your life outside of RoundNet?
it's been a lot of work. Yeah, I've been working. This is my first time doing like anything full time, and it's been a challenge to get used to, but still finding ways to have fun. Been playing a ton of poker recently.
Oh, like
Been
competitively?
No, well, we do $5 buy-in just with my
Oh,
friends, but
gotcha.
we've
Okay.
been playing like a bunch, and then still doing disc golf. Loved it. I actually just shot around, shot one under par, so I was happy.
All
But
right.
yeah, no, I've been, yeah, just finding ways to have fun. And also, I've been experimenting with some rule changes. So that's been good too.
Yeah, that's cool that you've like been a part of that process. I guess just like preliminarily like anything that's kind of catching your eye in terms of adding a new dimension to the game and something that and then also like with that how like easily implementable do you think anything would be?
Right. Yeah, that's the hard part is finding something that's like easy to just go into. Yeah, I mean, one thing I tried yesterday that would not be easy to implement, but was super fun was on the first hit, the serving team serves at the two receivers, and
Right.
then the receiving team on their first possession could not hit in that 90-degree quadrant between where they initially started. So
Yeah.
we just made like four little lines going out to the 6 foot line because you can kind of tell when it goes pretty far if it was on one side or the other. Super fun, not really implementable on sand. So like, there's a lot of things like that, but every single play, I was playing with like, three other premier players. We were all getting like if you didn't get the touch, it's cuz you messed up. It wasn't,
Mhm.
and at the same time hitting wise, there was still tons of opportunity for creativity. Really good. It makes hitting so much more important, setting becomes more important. Um, but yeah, it would be so hard to put four more lines out everywhere. Like I could almost imagine the tournament being like a grid where
Right.
you could just have those lines going, but I don't think it's really possible. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've played this variation, and I I found it interesting from the get go. I think that it does just promote rallies because you guys were just doing that. That 90 degrees was dead on the receive,
Just yeah,
correct?
just the first
Right.
touch, yeah.
And so like as far as implementing it, like I don't even think it's that bad. Like you said, like if you had to put the tournament on a grid, you could. One, I think it would also like evenly space out nets a little bit
Yeah.
more, which I think we could also deal with as well in a positive way. But
Definitely.
it definitely comes down to like, all right, now you got to get this like line and you got to stripe it and you got to maintain it because also like you're going to be running over that line. It's going to wear
Yeah.
out. And then you get into like, all right, an observer has to call that at some point. I mean, you can try and call that yourself, but when that line is infinitely long and the ball's kind of close to it, that's tough.
Yeah.
So there are some hiccups there. I think my main gripe with that one is mostly just that we say that our game is 360 degrees and has no boundaries, except for the start of every point, and that's where I'm like, all right, that's not
Yeah.
like I think that's a feature that we should play up. So I don't want to move away from that, but I do think that that gave some actual results, and it made you feel like defense was a little bit more possible. And it was like, oh, if we got into a position where we really only felt that we had to cover even just 90 degrees fewer, things would be a little bit better. So like how else could we maybe accomplish something like that where like maybe it's not a dead zone, but maybe by making it more difficult to hit or easy to read a hitter, like maybe you then
Totally.
would be in a position to do that. So I th- like
Right.
I feel like we learned some things from doing that, um, but it's tough.
Oh, it's tough. All right. Yeah, I wish there was some easy solution that everyone would agree on, right? But yeah, I mean, some things that I've heard and I've liked are like a slightly taller set.
Mm-hmm.
Make those flicks that come in at your ankles come in at your shins. I think it would be a very, I mean, obviously everyone would have to buy a new set, which would suck, but
Right.
I mean, at this point, something's got to change.
Well, and then I
So,
also worry about like stability with that too, because the higher you raise
oh,
it, like
interesting.
as soon as your thing's on stilts, like I don't know if you ever played like spike tall, which they like had in a van, but they it was
Hmm.
on 2x4s, but it was at your waist basically, so it was like too high. It was basically like
Right.
hold a beer, I don't want to like go down to hit something like it.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a fun like like casual variation of just like I don't want to move. We can just like hit around and get some touches in. But as soon as you do that, like then you hit a leg and it folds in, or like someone runs into the set and like it could just break.
Yeah. No,
So
that suck.
right. So it's so interesting. Like you have to combine all of these things. Like anything that you're talking about rule change wise. Like for the most part, there's just a lot of areas that you have to touch on. Whether that's the amount of work it's going to take to change the equipment, or and even just from like an engineering standpoint, like is it possible? So
Yeah.
like it literally touches on kind of everything.
Everything.
Yeah. So before we get into pockets and stuff like that, after your wonderful essay there, before we get into that, I just wanted to ask how your feelings were with like college being canceled this year
Oh, yeah.
in terms of the season. I mean, you're the defending national champ, and you didn't
Yes, I
really get a
am.
chance to defend that title. How does that kind of feel?
Yeah, it didn't feel great. Definitely was looking forward to college nationals all year. Um, yeah, I thought Cal Poly had a good chance, not only individually but as a club. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we practiced a lot. Definitely after seeing Frederick play for the first time, like since I would say he really grew as a player. Now I know that it would have been a very challenging, semis or finals whenever we saw them, but
Right.
yeah, I would have loved to have that chance. That would have been so much fun. I remember that first college national tournament I got to go to was my favorite tournament ever. Um, yeah, yeah, it was definitely a bummer. I totally respect why they canceled it, though. I think they made the right decision there.
Right.
It just sucks making the hard decisions like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's the the bummer that everyone kind of felt there. And as someone who didn't even get to compete in that last college one, who just went for funsies and to commentate and just have a good time, like
Yeah.
those tournaments had something special about them. And so I'm looking forward to when we can all get back, and hopefully this doesn't impact the growth of college, because I feel like that's like so the future there. And
Hmm.
you're not gonna be able to compete next year, are you?
Definitely not in the fall. I know they already canceled fall sectionals. I think spring and nationals are still in the air, so we'll see.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Well then, good. You'll still have a chance to defend.
still got a chance.
Yeah, but so Payer graduated though, right?
Payer graduated. Yeah, I have
And
one more year, and I'll be playing with Warren.
oh well, then you definitely have a shot.
We have a shot.
As someone who has lost to the two of you, I can tell that you
Uh,
guys have a shot. How, how was that? How was that whole Utah weekend too? I feel like I didn't really get to talk to you a whole lot afterwards. I mean, I was casualty number one on your road of terror, just rolling through every
uh,
top 20 player in existence.
that was something special. Yeah, no, super fun tournament, right? Because it started on Friday morning at 4 o'clock when I woke up, decided to drive to Utah, right? And it was a long drive. Someone ran into me like 30 minutes in. I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be a fun drive. Luckily, it was just in like stop and go traffic, so the damage wasn't too bad.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've been there, done that. Luckily
yeah,
I've never actually like not gotten to a tournament about it, but it sucks. And like, God, one of these days, like it's gonna happen, right?
yeah, seriously. I mean, yeah, I was definitely scared. I was like totally panicking. I'd never been hit before, but we made it to Utah. Wasn't too sore. Had a good pool play, got the 6th seed, and then we saw we had to play you guys. And I was initially very frustrated because
Yeah.
you guys were the 11th seed, and there's no way you guys were the 11th best team there.
No,
So
no. I
I
mean,
was,
unfortunately, that morning we were probably the 11th best team
oh,
there,
I
but
remember that. I do
we
remember
had a rough
that.
morning.
Yeah, you sure did. Um, but man, I was bummed because also when I think of you and Skylar as players, you guys are not your stereotypical pool player. You guys are definitely bracket players,
Hmm.
especially Skylar. Skylar doesn't, he care less about pool, but in
Right.
bracket, he's going all out. He's getting those touches. So that was a bummer, but we kind of saw hope because the only good thing was that Spikers and Anthony and Tyler were on the same side. They were
Right.
on the other side. So we're like, well, the best two teams at this tournament are on the other side. In our eyes, those are the best two teams. We're
Right.
like, okay, if we get through this first round, then we had to get through Hibachi, which until that tournament, I don't think I'd ever beat Zach Wood. So I was like, well, crap. And then we had to beat Ubiquitous, but luckily I play with Chris Bradley all the time, so I
Right.
had the little advantage there.
I had the
And
download.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then we made it all the way, played in the finals. We were losing, and then Warren went off in game one when we were down 18-20, and then or
Oh my
maybe it was
God, that's right.
18-19. Yeah, he went on a few breaks to end the game, and then game two, never really close. But yeah, I mean, they might have been tired after playing and beating Tyler and Anthony in semis. I don't know, but yeah, it was fun. I don't know, and I remember at that point I felt like okay, like now that kind of like proved to myself that like the countless hours I'd put in playing, like, okay, I can actually hang with like the top people. I don't know if I can still seeing all these reverse cuts. It's insane, but for a while
It's a
there, I
whole new
felt like,
thing, man.
yeah, it's ridiculous. I feel like I don't know. I don't see how to be able to consistently return both the reverse and the cut standing in the same spot unless you're like 5 feet away from the net. Do you know how? Like,
Well, so I have the displeasure of not being able to actually practice against anyone who can reverse cut. So
true. It's insane.
no one in my area has it. No one in my area is traveling and like figuring it out. So I have not stood behind one yet. I think the real thing is that you have to get a read on their shoulder and you have to
Yep.
know that it's coming beforehand. And if you don't, then you're just in a really tough spot because, you know, the reason why just being able to get cut isn't too bad is because you know that like it's either going to come straight at you or it's going to go to
Or
the right.
extended right
But
hand.
but when
Totally.
but when all of a sudden you have your two hands in place to defend either option, but then there's secret third option that goes the other
Yeah.
way, that seems like it's tough. So I think you have to read it off the bat and know. And then I guess all the Texas guys are saying like the real thing is you can't actually start moving for a ball
Until it hits
until
the net.
until it hits the net. And so
Which that's insane. That
what
is so hard to do.
right. Well, then I'm just like, from what I've seen so far, the reverse cuts are at least like slow enough that it seems possible. But like at first, that's what cut serves were. Cut serves were slow, but they went off to the
Yeah.
side and they screwed you. But like now, people are cutting so fast. So like
Yeah.
if you're able to ramp that up another 5-10 miles an hour, that's just going to be tough. Now,
Hmm.
I'll talk about a solution that I think will actually happen. It's in this like within this pocket call. I think this actually kind of helps define the reverse cut a little bit more, and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess let's just go into that. So
Let's do it.
yeah. Why did you initially write this wonderful essay? One, I just wanted like I guess before we get to that, I want to commend you on actually like taking the time to like sit down and thoughtfully write something and more than just like the hot take, what's a pocket? Like I it drives me nuts when I see that in the Facebook group. So thank you for putting some actual time into writing something out. And yeah, I guess just like what inspired it all? How did we get here? And I'll try and link the article in the description as well too, because you made
Yeah, go for
a PDF, which was nice, so that's extra shareable.
it. Yeah. Um, well, yeah, so until it was that weekend, Huntington Beach, I thought I knew what a pocket was. I'm like, if it comes around like shoulder height and it kind of hits the middle back, like, I can call ramp. Or if it clearly like changes trajectory, it's a pocket, right? But then I started playing a lot of pickup with Frederick and Caleb and some other guys from Texas, and I was hitting serves that were coming at their waist height that, and from my perspective, looked like they were hitting the front middle of the net, but they were calling back pocket because my serves kind of stay on the net for a while. And I like that got me thinking, okay, well, they clearly think that this is a pocket. I clearly think it's clean, but we don't know. There's no way of proving who's right because there's nothing to really compare it to. And then watching the semis and finals of Huntington Beach that weekend, all of Preston and Ryder serves were being called pockets, and I I couldn't really tell. Like not all of them. Some of them were clean, some were pockets. I just couldn't tell a difference. So then I was like, okay, I don't think anyone really knows what a pocket is. I think, but that's not the problem. To me wasn't so much like not being able to tell if it's a pocket or not. The problem to me is that everyone has a different idea of what a pocket is.
Right.
So it was just like Frederick and Caleb and Texas in general has a very strict definition of a pocket where they're like, if it's not hitting the front pocket, it's basically a back pocket, which I can kind of understand that, right? Because, the front pockets stay low. If it hits the middle of the net, it usually comes up to like at least from where, however high you hit it. And it comes up like it's impossible to say if it actually hits the back pocket or not. They're calling back pocket, and maybe it is affected by the back pocket. Maybe that's why it comes up that high. I don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows if like what the right pocket call is because all serves are affected by the back pocket in terms of how high they come. Like obviously the ones that hit the front pocket are coming off low because they're far away from that back pocket. But how close do you have to get to that back pocket where it's suddenly affected by it enough to
Right.
be called pocket? Nobody knows the answer to that. And it's different for every single serve. If you're hitting top spin, it'll come off at a different height relative to how close you hit it to the back pocket. If you're putting side top spin, side spin, back spin, like how high, if you're contacting it from shoulder height or waist height on your serve, it's different. And like that's my problem is I contact it from like waist height,
Right.
so it kind of like slides on that net a little bit, which is why I'm like, hey bro, it hit the front pocket, and then he's like, well, it kind of also hit the middle back because it kind of like slid on the net, and who's Who's right? I have no idea. So that's why I said, like, hey, we should figure out what a pocket is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that your main point of just like what is a pocket and your other point that like people in different places call pockets differently is
Hmm.
just really true. And it's interesting because for a while it actually got a lot better. Like in
Yeah.
2014 and 2015, you know, no one knew what a pocket was, and everything was so like region locked based on things. And
Hmm.
so everyone had weird definitions. Like I mean, people played with like other weird rules that they just thought were
Yeah.
rules to the game, and they weren't. And so for a while, it actually got better, and it was like, oh, so when we updated, the pocket rule, wording, it actually got better because before it was just like anytime the ball hits where the rim meets the netting.
Meets. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Totally.
it was like, but then we discovered near net, and it was like, well, do we think that that's a pocket? We were like, no. And so then we had to determine like what that is, and so we kind of wrote that in there. And so like, I guess just for everyone listening, I think it's important to just get some of this stuff down because we're gonna get a little bit into the terminology of it. I kind of wrote some other stuff, and I want to get
Sweet.
your vibe on it here. So currently, the pocket rule in its writing in our rule book resides in under section 5.5, specifically 5.52, labeled pocket. It says during a rally, any shot that changes the trajectory of the ball due to the ball's proximity to the rim without contacting the rim, i.e., pocket, is legal. Note this is not legal on a serve. So that is the description that also then focuses on why that is not a legal serve. So what we have is a super bare bones definition of a pocket here. And
Hmm.
this made a lot of sense back when we were only hitting things with no spin or things with top spin
Right.
because if the ball went straight, it wasn't a pocket. Anytime
Hmm.
that the ball just didn't go straight for the most part, it was good. Other than if like your proto cut serves back in the day with from like Grayson Ayers or like Troy Mock, they were hitting the middle of the net and just doing like a little bit of movement, but you
Oh
could
yeah,
but
just a few inches. Yeah.
they were so much slower, so you could see like, all right, this is where the ball hit, that's clearly good. And even then, like, people would say like, well, it moved, like, that's no good. So that was a whole thing. But and actually, I guess on a tangent here, I remember when I started playing in like early 2015, the way the pocket rule was written, it basically described the result of what a normal pocket would be, which is that like it it takes a weird bounce and like goes away from the receiver. And
Right.
so I was smashing things with my overhand serve
Right.
into like the left pocket or the right pocket, and it would curve back and hit the receiver in the chest.
Oh, and you were saying, well, it
And
went
I,
back to you, buddy.
and I was like, well, that's not no, a pocket goes away from the receiver. This went to
Yeah.
you. What are you talking about? But of course, obviously, that's a bad idea. Like we shouldn't make that we shouldn't make that the rule. So yeah, we had to
Right.
write a little bit better of a rule here. And so I remember in Nashville, we were talking a lot about pockets. There were a couple games that really came down to those like region definitions of pockets, and now I think we're back a little bit. So I think we need something a little bit more robust than what we currently have.
I would love that. Yeah.
Right. And so like I guess in part of what I was hearing in your conversation, it seems like part of your concern is mostly with the call of like a roll up on a serve too, which is technically a form of pocket. Like it does change in proximity to the rim. That's also listed directly under the pocket rule in 5.53,
Hmm.
saying during a rally, a hard struck shot where the ball lands completely on the netting and subsequently rolls into the rim and then off the net, i.e., a roll up, is legal. Note this is not legal on a serve. So do you think that the back side of the net is more of an issue or the front side?
Um, I think I would think the back. Yeah, I'd say serves that are hitting. It's so hard to tell if the serve is hitting the middle. Like if a serve hits the dead center, it's really hard to tell if it back pockets or not
Mm-hmm.
because of that roll up effect.
Yeah, I think part of that is. is also the problem. I think a lot of what I've kind of thought about is like solving front pocket a little bit and better defining that, because technically at this point, any if a pocket's going to be defined as any shot that changes the trajectory of a ball due to the ball's proximity to the rim, now if you're putting spin on the ball, it's hard
Yeah,
to tell like which part
it's
was the
super hard.
pocket, which part was
Yeah,
this.
which was the spin? Yeah.
And so I think it's important to define these things. Like, so if I'm doing a traditional cut serve with like a right hand and I step out to the side, if I hit the right side of the net,
Hmm.
we with cut, we'd call that a pocket because the
Right.
pocket probably aided you in that. But if you hit it on the left side of the net and it doesn't go up, then we say that that's good because like you hit basically like through the pocket. The pocket actually didn't like change how that went. And so I think like trying to define that a little bit better um, would be helpful. And then in terms of back pocket, that just becomes really really tough because also you can see minor ramps like when you hit the like if you hit the like middle of the net and you have a really low serve kind of like you do, if it rolls it gains a little bit of height even if it doesn't actually contact the rim,
Right.
but it does go up. And that's why I think like we almost have to just decide like it can only be a ramp up if the ball actually makes contact with the back of the net, like it
Hmm.
actually has to contact the rim part in order for it to be considered a roll up. But I'd like to kind of play again and see what that would actually impact because people are talking about like, all right, let's just like get rid of the roll up call. um, that might help us define what a pocket is. but
Yeah.
but can you imagine
No, I
having
can't.
to fight those off? Like that'd be horrible.
It would be very, very hard.
It'd be next
We
to
definitely
impossible.
need,
It'd be the
yeah,
biggest buff to serving of all time.
yeah, we would need to definitely accompany that with something else, like, oh, scooting the line back to 7 feet, or, bigger ball, or like, yeah, it would, or looser net. Like, it'd have to come with something that like nerf serving.
Right, exactly.
A
So
huge change.
I have a delight for everyone who's watching this on YouTube, and for you who's going to get this screen share here. But I've drawn
Oh,
a very
sweet.
crude picture here so we can start talking about pockets from an over-the-top view. So I'm going to share this with you, and we're going to flip over to.
Oh yeah,
Are you?
beautiful.
Thank you. Wait, are you seeing the Twitch or no?
Oh, I'm just seeing your spike ball circle with your spike
Oh, right,
line.
right, right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. This is my first time actually doing screen share on this. It's so
Oh,
interesting. Okay,
nice.
so when it comes to like what a pocket is, there's just so many things that can be considered a pocket. So
Hmm.
if we take our little ball right here, um, we also have to keep in mind that anytime we write a rule regarding pocket, it also just can't be only a rule that applies to people who cut serve or people who reverse cut serve or people who
Totally.
do this. It also has to be something that makes sense all the way down to like an intermediate and beginner's bracket. Because like if I technically gentleman serve the ball to you, like if we're gonna say that like a pocket, like or like a back pocket or a lip doesn't go higher than the contact point of the initial uh, what do you call it? Than like the initial contact point, meaning
Right,
that
right.
like if you serve down low, then your ace has to be down lower. Then like a gentleman serve would prove that like that would then possibly be illegal.
Right,
If it hit the
yeah.
middle of the net, if I started here and just did a gentleman serve and it went off a little bit higher, like that would be a pocket. So like
Right.
we have to write things that actually make sense all
Totally.
around.
And that's the hardest part.
Right, exactly.
Cause every serve is different.
Yeah. Well, and where we also want to try and come up with something that at least preemptively sees what the future is and prevents other
Hmm.
things from becoming a problem. So, there's a little bit of that to it. So the rule that I wrote here, um, I think that so there's also so another part of the rule is included under service faults, which is 4.6 if you're following at home, and 4.67 talks about the near net. So it says the ball's trajectory. So it's a fault if the ball's trajectory changes due to proximity to the rim without contacting the rim, i.e., pocket. Exception: if the ball hits near the server side of the net, commonly called near net, it typically bounces low and hard without a change in direction. This is a legal serve. And so this is what people are doing on cut serves specifically is they're saying, well, I'm hitting near net and with spin, and so it's not changing due to the trajectory of the rim, it's changing due to the spin that I'm putting on the ball. So now that's a legal serve. But what's interesting is our definition of near net is actually horrible. So it says if the ball hits near the server's side of the net. What does that mean?
Yeah, I
Because
don't know. How
because
far to the weak side is it, when you're hitting that cut? I
well
don't know.
well even just from even like more basic than that, like if I like the server side of the net, so I start serving here, is everything on this half of the net the server side? Is this all the server side of the net?
Yeah, it doesn't really say. It
Right.
doesn't
It,
say.
it doesn't
We don't
really
know.
say. So I think part of it is actually deciding what is near net.
Hmm.
And one thing, like the way that we play this is that if you're like me and you're serving like it's 2016 or 2015 and you're serving over the top, near net's real easy to define because
Yeah.
it's going to be right out in front of you.
Hmm.
But if I serve from over the top and my trajectory to the net is straight on, but it hits here, that's not near net, that's a pocket. It's going to shoot off that way. If I hit it over to the right over here by, 2 ball lengths, it'll shoot inward. That's also a pocket. That's not near net. But if you step out to the right, where's where does that near net go? Now, my understanding of it would be that near net is going to be directly in front of where you basically step to. So the way that I kind of
Hmm.
rewrote this is the location of near net is determined by the location just beyond the rim that is along the imaginary line between where the ball was contacted on a serve and the center of the spike ball net. So if
Totally. I like that.
right, so if I step out to here and this is going to be my contact point on the right side here, there's an imaginary line from here to the center of the net. That's not a thing. I still have the select tool here. Forgive me. So if I got this line going directly to the center of the net, that means that our near net is now right here.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
now
that's correct.
and now the question is how big is that? So I would say that it's roughly the size of the ball. Um,
Oh, interesting. I think it's bigger.
Well, it's got to be a little bit bigger, but to what extent? So I would,
Right.
if you put a ball on either side of it, like I could see a ball right here shooting off at some crazy angle, and I don't know that that's necessarily near net either. But also, I think, or maybe I'm wrong. Are you saying that everything to the left of this would then be
Um,
near net as well?
well, I'm thinking just like a bigger ball. Like a bigger circle than what you have would be near net.
Right.
Um, yeah,
But
I
like
mean,
like
and
ball plus 20%, plus 30%.
yeah, something like that. And are we talking about strictly like what is a near net, or are we because I mean, sometimes when I serve it, with my backdoor serve, right? I'm aiming at the front. Like if you take that same ball where you have it right now, I
Mm-hmm.
actually aim in between your two right black pieces of the net. So I'm aiming like right around there. That's where I
Right.
aim with my back door, and it just goes straight. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but it goes straight. It's like I don't know. Only when I hit the close side of it, of course. But like still, I don't know. But yeah, typically I would say where you have the near net, anything like too far to the side and it just pockets, right?
Right. Well, and see, this is where it gets interesting too, because I think that, when we're talking near net, we're basically talking that zone that's about the size of the ball just on the other side of the rim.
Yeah.
Like, and it's got to be a little bit longer than that, obviously, but it can't
Right.
be too much longer than that. Otherwise, it's the entire net. So
To- Totally.
that's what's tough here. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is defining this point because I think it then defines front pockets a little bit better. So if I if I had that verbiage to it, that already improves things. I also think in general, saying that if a ball hits near the server side of the net, commonly called a near net, it typically bounces low and hard without a change in a horizontal
Oh,
direction, specifically left and right. And then
yeah.
we allow the roll up rule to cover the back end of the net. And so this is basically saying that like we're dealing with a pocket being a change in horizontal direction, and then we can deal with a roll up being a change in vertical direction. Um, one's gonna be a result of hitting the front of the rim. One's gonna be a result of hitting the back of the rim. Like, does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. But once we define this spot on the net, I think that that becomes a possibility to then better define what a pocket actually is. So I changed the definition of pocket only slightly.
Mhm.
So during a rally, any shot that changes the horizontal trajectory of a ball due to the ball's proximity to the rim. And so I added, um, so yeah, changes the trajectory of the ball due to the ball's proximity to the rim in the direction of the imaginary line drawn between the ball's initial contact point on the net and the center of the net without contacting the rim is legal. Note this is not legal on a serve. So things would be not legal. So
Right.
basically, if I step out to the right here and I'm doing a cut serve, if I
Totally.
hit this front pocket, we're all agreeing that that's legal. But
Mhm.
what we're also then agreeing is that if it hits anywhere
On the left
on the
side.
left side of it,
Or even some people like to say a little bit on the right side too, as long as you don't get too close.
that becomes the question. There is like
Yeah.
I'd rather define how big this spot is
Mhm.
and then say you just can't go to the right of it. So basically, if
Oh,
you're
I'm down.
because at that point, now if you're doing a cut serve and it's going off to the right and you've stepped off to the right and you hit it to the right of where that near net is,
Mhm.
then the trajectory towards the center of the net would be would would be this line right here. And
Right.
so and that's also the direction in which the ball's cutting. It's cutting to the left there and inward towards the net. So now it's impossible to tell how much of that cut or that spin or that change in direction is due to a cut versus being aided by the rim itself. So
Yeah.
I would
It
say
is
it,
impossible.
I would say it makes sense to just call that a dead zone. And
Yeah.
like I played with Thomas the other day because he was in Illinois and he would just say all the time he'd say wrong side and he was basically saying like you just hit like you hit the ball on the wrong side of that, and whether he was doing a fuego and it went to the wrong, it was just on the wrong side of the net, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. Basically, like this is the wrong side. If you're gonna hit a cut serve into this, it now has to be over there. Now, obviously, if it also lips off of that, now we got to deal with that. But I
Mhm.
think that then comes into the idea of what is what's a roll up. But this is basically saying that if you hit it over here, anything that would be a pocket would shoot the ball toward. So like if your ball hit here,
And it still cuts left, then it's clean. Right.
right, exactly. So if your ball lands here
Mhm.
on the to the left of that center point, this would be the imaginary line to the center of the net. And so if your ball cuts away, that's
Yeah, then you're
legal.
fine.
But if
Yeah,
you're
because it
but if
didn't
you're
get affected.
but if your ball then, because you have those where you hit a really good spot but it also then catches pocket and then it shoots off
Mm.
like this,
Yeah, like you
that's
see it. Yeah.
still in the direction of, because this would be your angle in. And so if you went, out to the right, that would be towards the center of the net, meaning
Totally bad.
that's no good. So
Totally.
I think that makes a ton of sense. So the implications for this then would be the exact opposite if you were doing a reverse cut serve. And
Mhm.
so if you're doing a reverse, if you hit the ball now on this side of the net, that would now be no good because
Yeah.
now that would be assisting it in that way versus if you hit it on this side of the net, that would then be good as long as it continues on that path away from the ball. And so I think like part of the reason why the reverse cut is actually so devastating is I think people are still calling this area right here.
Yeah,
Like
the
if
front
you
pocket
right
near net.
right the front pocket
Yeah.
if you hadn't stepped out, which is no longer front pocket. It's no longer near net. Like
Hmm.
we've now established that near net moves with you. So if you step out to the side, it's now moved with you. So if you shoot off to the left of that, then that's going to be no good. Now what this allows you to do is start reacting to a ball as soon as you know the trajectory of it to the net. And so if you see a ball that's coming over here, now you only have to defend a cut serve
Right.
because
Which would be super
because you
nice.
know that if it reverses, it's a pocket.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
if it so now the tough part is if you hit that front pocket area, if you hit near net, that's when you're able to get that like mastery level of deception. And that I would just call like bravo, super
Yeah.
amazing
You
hit,
nailed it. Yeah.
super
It's
amazing
really
hit.
hard.
That's cool. But you see how that like already better defines like what an actual pocket is. A pocket
Yeah.
is definitionally changing the trajectory of the ball because of the location on the net, because of its proximity to the rim. And so it kind of guides you to this idea that like you can cut through a pocket. You just can't
Mhm.
cut with a pocket.
Right. Right. Totally. I think the serve that this would biggest clarify is those backdoor cut serves, right? Because and I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually guilty of I aim for that all the time. Like late in the game, I've only been hitting the cut serve and the backdoor, which are like my two main serves. I either hit very far right and I'm backdooring, or I hit middle or left, I'm cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Late in the game, I will kind of like shift over my cut serve a little bit to the right, kind of disguise it so it looks more like a backdoor, but then it cuts. And then I say, well, it was close enough to the middle where I try to take it. And I mean, usually they don't even call it right. But yeah, I would totally be okay with those being illegal. But the way they have it now, I think most people think if it's a little bit on the wrong side, it's still fine as
Right.
long as you don't get too close to that right side.
Right.
Because you can just say that, it's all spin.
Yeah. Well, and so in general, like I just think this is like better defined at least than it
Yeah,
was
no,
because
it's
like
definitely better defined.
Lord, we just had no definition. Like in going back, I was like, really, this is what we've like
Yeah, it's crazy.
like
It's
in my
crazy.
mind, this is how I've basically been calling serves, but I just haven't put like words to it or haven't like
Hmm.
tried to
Yeah,
explain it. And so then actually trying to write that down, I think is tough. Now when you get to back pocket or roll up situations,
ugh,
I think it gets a little bit more tough because you're gonna have to
way
write
tougher.
something that is gonna guide people towards understanding
Science.
well, yeah, well, and the understanding that every serve from a starting point at least is going to start with angle in equals angle out. So if you hit the ball straight down, it goes straight up. You know what I mean? And from every degree that you change that, it changes too. So down to if you let the ball hover right above the net and then you swipe it, it goes crazy, crazy low. So there are some people that cut serve very, very high, and there are other people that cut serve
Like
super
Jacob
low.
and
Yes,
Travis.
pair, yeah,
Or
is
yeah, dude.
for sure someone that cuts from super super high. Now his
Oh
end up
yeah.
low, but there are plenty of his that are legal because if he hits things with movement down and into the center of the net,
Hmm.
it comes out high and like at your head.
Yeah.
But
And we don't
that's
know if they're clean. We don't know. They
but
were called pocket all day in New Mexico,
right.
unless it was like below like belly button.
But see, that's the thing. There's nothing in the rules that says that like your serve has to come out lower than it starts or something like that. And I think
Yeah.
that's how people are saying it, and that's just not true. Otherwise, like if I go back to doing my over the top serve, if I hit the middle of the net, it was always a legal serve. If I hit the front, it went a little bit lower, and if I hit the back, it really ramped up because of
Yeah,
just
and yeah, it was
angles.
clear.
And
Right.
right. And so, now when you're adding all these spins and you're adding, steps out to the side, it gets a little bit more difficult. But I think it's important to know like where people start from, and like you need to pay attention to where the ball hits on the net, because if a ball hits here on the net, it's very different than hitting the center.
Well, yeah, and something also important to take into consideration is that the looser the net is, the more like so it's kind of hard to define a position on the net just because every single net has a little bit different tightness, and the looser it is, the more, back pockets there are.
Right.
So
Well,
we would really need to standardize net tightness if we were going to try to define a back pocket based on position on the net.
yeah. Now I'm actually running some experiments on that right now. I bought some like hanging like
Weights. Yep,
gram
that's the
weights,
way to do it.
and
That
just
is the way to do it.
just trying to be like, all right, given the idea that you like have the net as square as possible, like what weight do you hang from the center for it to like barely be touching the ground or barely be off the ground?
Hmm.
Because we need to unify this net tension
Oh yeah,
for
it's
sure.
also an issue. Yeah, different regions have different tightnesses. There's Preston tightness. There's defend like people like to play defense, try to like loosen those nets, like
Hmm.
I don't know what's right. Nobody knows. But luckily nobody really cares. I don't know, I've never really heard someone complain a ton about the net tightness.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten better at it because things were so much worse, but now the stakes are higher, and now with these little changes being in there, like people just have preferences, and so
Totally.
because the idea is that like if I drop the ball from 5 feet, it goes up 20 inches. Like that's really hard to measure. It's just an estimate. So what we have
Yeah,
right now is an
totally.
estimate for net tension, which
Yeah.
just at its best like doesn't really get the job done. So it'd just be nice if like we started the game with like, all right, this is correct. And
Yeah,
then if
although
it
don't
loosens, it
nets
loosens like
loosen? Yeah, they all just loosen up. Like
right.
even I was playing yesterday. First game, the net was perfect. The rest of the day was pockety.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think that if you I think if we like at least defined that a little bit better, like people would then get a feel for it. Like I mean I
Oh,
remember before like I didn't even have a feel for whether the net was good or not. Like I had
yeah.
to like
Like
play a
should
couple
be.
of points, but now I'm like, all right, this is like roughly good and we can just make micro adjustments as we go. But, how is that to someone that only plays 4 tournaments a year versus, me that plays 20? Like
Yeah.
I think that's super different too.
Hmm.
So, like I think that's important in defining this as well. But that's where like so if we can get to a point where we have a good definition of what proper net tension is, my line of thinking is like a pocket more than anything has to be a location and a description of what happens after that. Because otherwise it just gets really, really sloppy really, really quickly
Hmm.
and becomes harder and harder to define. I just don't really know a better way to do it. And
Yeah.
so, and that's where, like, what would be helpful, I've talked about this too, um, and it'd be, great if we could get to here, but it doesn't make sense with the product that we currently have. Like, it'd be nice if we had something on the net that just, like, you
Oh, like
know,
a circle. Yeah.
like a circle that's like or like a radius that's one
Yep.
ball length in or whatever, and not
Hmm.
even to be like that spot's no good or that spot's the rim. It would just help define
But
where the
like a
ball hit.
guide.
It would be a guide to like where the ball hit on the net. And like also like we could also throw cross lines on there too. Like what if this one was like white and this one was white right here and had a bullseye in the middle, so that we could just like see like where's that ball hitting? Because half the time, I
Yeah.
mean, God, there is such. I wish I've tried to find this post like 900 times on Facebook. Somebody please find it. It was after 2016 Nationals, but Dylan and I played two guys in pool play, and there was I served a ball at Preston, my over the top serve, and I hit near net right here and aced him, and he said no, that's not like no, that was it was a pocket, and I said where do you think it hit? And there's someone took I think it was Dylan, I think he took screenshots from the match that was recorded, and it was me going over to the net and pointing right here, and then Preston going over to the net and pointing right here. Like it was not even close, like all the way to the right of the net. And so if we had some guides on the net that just like allowed you to be like just guided your eye towards like where it actually hit, that'd be helpful
Yeah,
too. Because I think
totally.
some
Yeah.
people are like, well, I thought it hit dead middle. Oh, well, I thought it actually hit a little closer over here. That's why I thought it was a lip, and that's the difference. Versus like if we had some
Yeah,
guides on there, that'd be great.
a
Which
lot
is
easier.
which I guess gets to my other point, which I think like a lot of people are talking with equipment changes like we need a whole new set. Like what if we just needed new netting?
Yeah, maybe.
Like what if the netting was just something that we were able to drape over the existing infrastructure that we already had? Spikeball could,
Hmm.
send these out for, $5 or something like that after you,
Hmm.
get to a point where upgrade it. And then like the netting could also like make the maybe that's like more uniform in net tension. Maybe
Yeah, like
it's
more squares.
right, but like still making it collapsible. Because some people are like, oh, it just needs to be one thing that's like a trampoline. But even trampoline springs, they wear out over time, and so you don't want that. What's nice about spike ball is that it is adjustable, so you can like
Yeah.
fix those little things. But what's annoying about it is that you constantly have to fix and adjust it. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a back and forth there, but I think that like that would be something that I would rather explore. Like everyone wants to change the ball, everyone wants to raise the height of the set. I think honestly, just playing with an entirely new netting to throw over the infrastructure we had, like maybe that slows down the ball. I know Spikeball at one point had it was almost like trampoline material, but it wrapped around an existing set, and it was cool because it was like two, it was like overlaid mesh basically. Um, and so they were able to print on it. So they had a Spikeball logo on it, which was cool. So it was like entirely black, but there weren't, square holes in it. It was just, yeah, it looked more like trampoline, but also kind of like mesh basketball shorts or something like that too. It was interesting. But like the problem with that material was that it stretched out a little too much over time, and then you couldn't do anything about it. So that was an issue, but that at least
Yeah.
seemed more promising, and that slowed the ball down too much. But if you could do something like that, like maybe that'd be better. Maybe you'd have some targets on there. Those seem like better options to me than getting into, you
Yeah,
know,
like a whole change. Yeah.
write a whole change and selling a whole new
Yeah.
set or
100,
something like
100
that.
bucks for everybody who bought a pro set to go buy a new one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the tougher things when everyone's talking about
Yeah.
this. I'm just like, yeah, like people like I think most people weren't mad initially when the Pro set came out because we knew we needed something better. But
Hmm.
now like we already have something of higher quality, and the idea is like this isn't going to be better quality, it's just going to be completely different. And
Right.
so and now we're big enough at this point that like there are people that are closer to casual that have a oh no, where'd you go? Oh, I'm still screen sharing. One second, let me
Yeah. You're good.
get rid of that. Stop share. There you are. So like, there were so many people that like there are more casual people that are playing right now, and they don't want to buy a whole nother set about this. Versus
Right.
like, if Spikeball creates
And
anything new, I'm probably on board unless I hate it so much that I decide I'm retiring. Like,
yeah.
it'd have to be horrible for me to not buy it. But there are other people who, like, oh, I just bought what the pros are playing on, and like now if it's going to be completely different, that's one thing versus like a little bit of a redesign or like looks a little bit cooler or a little bit more updated. That's different. If it's materially different, it just becomes a burden for the community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously I would buy a new set, but yeah, I think you're somewhere around 50, probably like half the people would be like totally down for a new set, half the people would find it a burden, like you say.
Right. Yeah, so that's a whole thing too, and I think that so that's why I think the net is probably one of the more modular things that you could actually like swap out and
Yeah, for sure.
materially change the game because the current pro ball reacting with the current net is what's allowing for a lot of these spins that people are saying are just getting to the point that they're becoming overpowered, and it's forcing you to focus on serves because on serves you can generate so much more of that spin when you can control your own toss and stuff like that.
Yeah, do you
So
see
it's just
those
easier than
pictures of
playing
people
defense.
like squeezing and like deforming the ball when they're serving it?
Right.
It's crazy. Like I didn't know that actually happens, but you just see it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's wild. I mean there have been wild photos of me even before doing all the like spins and stuff like that. Like I mean I just clocked the shit out of it. So like the ball
Yeah,
would look
it gets
crazy.
tiny. Yeah, and then I don't know. Obviously, like, do you prefer serving with a deflated ball or perfect ball or overinflated?
So I am I'm trying to like just not care all that much anymore because the way that it comes down to it is that like at tournaments the balls are going to fluctuate all the time and you're going to have to play tournaments when it's 100 degrees and they're huge and there's nothing you can do about it because they're either flat to get to the right diameter or they're the right amount of like springy, but
Yeah,
they're huge. Our balls just
right.
kind of suck in that regard because they get worse over time. So
Mhm.
unless you have like brand new balls, like that's
Yeah,
tough.
they're not
I
good.
think when I was doing my over the top serve, I liked the balls more overinflated. Um, it, it was a risk because the bigger they were, the more likely I was to hit rim. But if I didn't hit rim and got a good serve, I was much more likely to ace with it
Yeah,
because it's just
coming
harder to
off faster.
harder to handle that big ball. Came off faster and would tend to just shank more off of
Mhm.
receivers because I wasn't really I wasn't outright acing people. I wasn't getting no touch aces because I'm serving it right at you, so I was forcing bad touches. So I think I definitely liked that more. Now that I'm cutting, I think I just like the right amount of inflation in a ball.
Yeah,
But I'm trying to, get to the point that I can make little adjustments. So like, all right, we're playing with some overinflated balls. All right, we're playing with some underinflated balls.
totally. Yeah,
Just got to
different serves
learn
for
at this
everyone.
point. Cause yeah,
Yeah.
they are inconsistent.
Mhm. Yeah, I know. I definitely have different serves for. Yeah, like I can't cut an overinflated ball very well,
Yeah,
and if it's a flat ball, I'm going for my lowest percentage, widest, fastest cut possible.
yeah. Well, it is.
And
I mean, just scientifically, it's gonna spend the most time on the net, which means it's gonna get the most
right,
jump. It's gonna, translate that
yeah,
horizontal to or vertical to horizontal momentum a little bit more. And so that just, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people 2 years ago really preferred those,
flat,
underinflated balls. And this is what Dylan and I
yeah.
would argue about constantly because he wanted all the underinflated ones. I wanted all the overinflated ones.
That's awesome.
and so it was funny. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I mean, it's just wild. But I think that like I think more than anything, like I think you're right. I think the main part of your pocket calls idea was that like there just needs to be video definitions of like this is what's good, this is what's not. But I think more
hmm
than anything, like even if we did that, like and here's why would be very difficult given our current
yeah. So you need
rule.
both, right?
Right.
Yeah, you need, um, we need a better definition, like what you were saying, but and like the things that you kind of outlined earlier are great. Like they solve a lot of problems just instantly, but there's some that you can't define with words really. I mean, you can, but it would take forever. Like I could do it if you gave me like 10 pages or like probably more, honestly, but it'd be so hard. It's just I think because in your mind, Chris,
Hmm.
I'm willing to bet that you can look at 100 different serves, and if you have like multiple camera angles for each one, you could tell me if you think each one of them was either good or bad, and you could probably tell me why. Um, Nobody's gonna agree with you though. Everybody has a different definition. We
Yeah.
just need one group of people, in my opinion, to just go in the lab, see these serves from the different angles, figure out if they're good or bad, tell us why, and then help us to adopt their opinion.
Right. I mean, well, there's definitely the public opinion part too, which has largely shaped what we see as a pocket right now.
Hmm.
Because that
Like,
definition didn't change between, I don't think it changed between at least 2017 and
and now,
29
yeah,
and now.
yeah,
It may even be from 2016, but I think at least 2017. Um, but if we've been playing with that for 2 3 years, serves have changed a lot in 2 to 3 years, and what we call good and not good has also evolved over 2 to 3 years, and our definition
yeah,
just doesn't match that right now. And so part of this becomes the question of, do you want to define it? Do you want to spend a lot of time defining how we see it right now? Or do you want to come up with a cleaner one and maybe redefine what a pocket is? And that's where I think that, like, especially with this like reverse cut, like I'm I feel comfortable saying that, like, if you step out to the right and then you hit what would be front pocket if you serve straight on in a reverse cut, that should be a pocket. Like,
hmm,
I feel good enough about that. That's not being called in tournaments right now, though, and
right,
so I think it'd be tough right now to be like, all right, everything that we've called a good serve for the last 2 years is no longer good.
yeah, it'd suck.
I think that's a little bit tougher. Our cut's a little new, so like there's a little more
It'd be a little
play
easier,
to
yeah,
like just change the culture around it immediately.
yeah,
But like I think what you were saying is also important too, in that, like, if you had 10 pages to describe it, you probably could if you sat
I
down and did
definitely
it.
could.
But no one has 10 pages worth of memory for what all those little things need to be. So like we need to come up with something clean and not not overly simple. Like right now our problem is that our rule is too simple, but we definitely don't need 10 pages about it. We need something that,
Yeah,
but like it might involve being like, if you drew an imaginary line from here to the center of the net, like that's plausible for a person to do versus like, well, it depends on, the
yeah,
coefficient of friction along the, like,
right.
at that point, like no one's
It's garbage. Yeah,
right.
and even if you
It's
read
garbage and
it,
no one cares.
you're not gonna understand it the same way someone else understands it. So
Right. So you got to come up
that's
with
all
something like simple yet effective.
Yeah.
And I just invite people, like, try and write these things. They're tough. I think I spent 2 hours making those little improvements. I think I added 2 sentences
Yeah.
in 2 hours. Like, and
Well,
it's
the
tough.
simpler, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, yeah, you definitely want to get to a concise point, but it also, I don't think, like, solves everything yet. But I think it's at least an improvement, and
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what everyone else is kind of thinking alongside of this, um, just because I'd like the good ideas to rise towards the top with this. Um,
Mhm.
but like I think there are a couple of things right now. We're talking a lot about rule changes. We're talking a lot about where our sport goes, and I think that we should also take a second to just realize that, like, we also just need to catch up. Like, half of it is just like, what if we just better defined everything that we're already seeing right now? Like, would that help? And in the process of that, maybe does that change things a little bit too? And I mean, even that's difficult. So it's the whole thing. What
Yeah.
you have any other thoughts on pockets here before we at least hop off that topic?
Um, I guess a couple quick things. I really like what you said about whether or not we want to stick with the definition we have now or change it. And make the changes like you were saying, like defining what that side pocket, how far that side pocket kind of comes out at you,
Mm-hmm.
or like I guess how close the near net is. Yeah, so that's really interesting. And it's also, I think it's really important when people are thinking about what they think pockets should be, is to not just think about it from your personal perspective, because I
Yeah.
think everybody wants to have the dirtiest serve. Not everyone, a lot of people want to have a looser definition of what a pocket is so that they can take more of those aces. But, that's not, maybe that's not what the sport needs. Maybe the sport needs a more, you know, understandable pocket definition. Maybe like what you were saying, like anything to the right of that near net. I don't care if it had, Tyler Chiswick's spin on it, but it hit the right side by 2 inches. That's a side pocket.
Right.
Like maybe that would help define some pockets. But yeah, the back, I just don't see. The back is just so hard to say.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah, no, I really appreciate what you've said about that though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the back is like the next frontier, and I do think that in some regards it's the tougher of them. But like I was saying, like I think until you actually get to a point where you can properly be locating as both as server and receiver, it or until we can close the gap on where a server and a receiver see the ball hitting on a net, I think that we're going to have that issue because then
Mhm.
people are saying like, well, as a result, like I saw a jump up. So therefore, I think it was lip. And I go, right, but where do you think that hit on the net? And then they point to the front pocket, and I go,
Yeah,
so you think it rolled all like from there to
that.
like that's a problem. Like
Yeah,
so, I think we have to like have some guidelines in place that like you said, this doesn't get into the technical writing of the rule, but having a video that kind of explains the like, well, if it hits here, it's probably not going to roll across the entire net, and if it does, you'll
the net.
probably know it because it'll probably be very, very slow.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think like closing that gap is huge, which is why like I just don't have a solution for actually like having markings on the net that would be guides towards that.
Hmm.
But I think it would help, like even just having the quadrants on the net, like you know, painted
Yeah,
on or something like that would help because it would just be like, well, no, it was way closer to the middle of the net. Oh no, I saw it in this quadrant. I saw it in that quadrant. Like right now, there's just a lot of time on the net that you just can't tell where it is. So it makes it a little bit tougher. Um,
hmm,
but I mean, I think this is at least a good start, and hopefully things just keep improving from there. Um, so I guess like this was kind of your calling card here. This was your big project was hey guys, we need to focus on pockets here. We talked a little bit about other rule changes you might want to implement or anything like that. Is there any other areas that you think are just like this is where we should focus our attention?
um, uh, yeah, I think actually no, I don't know. I love that we're exploring tons of different things. I think that's really great. Um, I mean, defense would be great. Help defense out a little bit would be great.
Yeah.
I think it's okay that serve receive might be permanently behind. Um, aces are great. Defense is great. I would love to see hitting get a little bit harder. I would love to see setting get a little bit more important. But yeah, I think the most important thing is to, yeah, just keep the game. Like, I don't want to see any drastic changes. I don't want to see the game get reworked where, I don't think a huge change is necessary. Like, a few inches, maybe the net's a few inches taller. Maybe the 6 foot line becomes like 2 meters, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I
I'm glad someone else finally said that back to me. I have gotten zero people from America to to
say two
say to
meters.
say 2 meters as a good idea back to
I'd
me.
be okay with it.
Everyone in Europe loves it, and I'm like, right? No, it's great.
Yeah. No, I'm super down for 2 meters. But what I would want more testing on I know a lot of people don't like when they say we should abolish the toss call. Just say you can toss it wherever, you can lean, you can toss, do whatever. I am very wary of that becoming a good call. I would just want to make sure that Spikeball has done a lot of testing on that before they confirm it. Because as someone who's 5'9", I know for a fact that I wouldn't be able to hang with Drucker anymore if we were allowed to lean as far as we want. Um,
Yeah,
like there's no way I would become so much worse than I am now. Like Tyler Chiswick would be nowhere near the top player consideration if you could toss it. Because like I was actually messing around with this. I can actually lean like my upper body like a good foot past where and I can toss the ball a foot in front of where I'm leaning and having my shoulder go forward. So even if I just want to make sure Spikeball knows like that there will be a huge impact on like the necessity for height if they abolish that line. And to be honest, I can actually tell pretty well if someone tosses it in front of the line.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
I don't have a problem with it.
I think most people that complain about that at this point just like aren't good at serve receive for like
Yeah,
especially if you're in Premiere and you're like, hey, you served that like the ball was like on the line. Hey, the like if it's a ball length inside, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. Like now, if you're serving from 5.5 feet, it becomes a little bit different.
totally.
But
Yeah.
like usually, like it's just not that different. I agree with that. I think the main thing though is that like one, if you increase the radius of the circle, it necessitates that like you have to step out like one you can't step out as wide, which means that like I guess you can still reach in a little bit, but you can't
Hmm.
do both. And I think the main thing with that is that we'd have to write the rule so that you can't fall into the circle after
Hmm.
your serve. Um, and and the rule was originally written that the toss had to be behind the line because Skylar wanted to prevent somebody who was super tall from literally like towing the line and falling towards the net and
Yeah.
then like hit it right before they lifted their feet and serve
Yeah,
it from
totally.
like 2 feet. So obviously we don't want that. So we have to be like, all right, you can't fall into the circle. That's a problem.
But the next step from that, where you can take a step behind the line after you serve it, you can still get really far in front of that line without losing your balance, especially if you're tall, is what I'm saying.
That is, I mean, that is true. I guess that's one thing that I worry about a little bit less, just because like this is an issue with a zillion sports. Like as soon as they raise the basketball hoop up to 10.5, is it 10.5 feet? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
10 feet, 10 feet.
Like 10 feet. Like yeah, someone who's 7 feet is gonna outperform you.
Be
Like
good, right?
I don't want to defend Drucker in basketball. It's a nightmare. Like, but that's what it is. And like I played volleyball. Like, and I'm not a short guy. I'm 6'2", but I was like undersized for a middle. Like I couldn't go
Right.
play in college anywhere. They wouldn't even look at my video because I'm 6'2". So like the the top ends of sports like always cater towards like more freaks every once in a while, and I don't think that's horrible. Like there also is Allen Iverson. He was 6 foot,
Yeah.
but he was he's an example of someone that still found a way to succeed in a league full of super tall people. So I just like I wouldn't want a sport that like made it impossible for anyone else to succeed, especially at like more amateur levels or like college level or like I mean, but even or like high school level, like those kind of things. Like you don't want something like that, just because that's gonna be bad for growth of the sport now. But honestly, like Drucker doesn't have that much of an advantage other than the fact that like he gets to serve from up higher. I think that's
Hmm.
more than like how far he can reach or lean
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, true. Like defensive, I mean, it's nice being able to stand further away off the net when you're taller because you can still get those booms, whereas I need to get a little bit closer to get that boom. But yeah,
Right.
like, yeah, right now, spike ball being tall helps a little bit, but yeah, not that much, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing is like, like whatever the serve rule is, like it'd have to be that like yes, tall people are gonna have like somewhat of an advantage, like because like I mean, PJ has a massive advantage with his gangliness in his arms, like he's able to just like fall over the net and just
Hmm.
hit versus like you can't do that, you know what I mean? Like
No way.
you'd hit the net. So like there's always going to be advantages for tall people, and if you talk to Tyler, like he thinks that he's better at defense because he's shorter. And
Right.
so
Totally.
um
Yeah.
which is interesting because I always think like I mean when I play with Drucker especially, like he's so good at defense because he can just reach further, and like
Yeah.
you
Totally.
can't hit over him, which is like
Right. Exact. It's annoying. Yeah.
right. No, that's the toughest thing. Like switching back to having to play against him after I played on his team, I was like, oh, he's still the only player on the entire circuit that I can't hit over. Like I can hit
Yeah.
over anyone else, but
Right.
him, he is impossible. And like that gets to be his advantage, but also like if you drop him, like he has to like fall over and go to his knees because like he can't just like he can't get down fast enough. He's got to like he's got a lot of space to go in order to get his arms down. So there's just benefits and not benefits to those things. So like I think that for the sake of clarity, like backing up the line is important, and allowing people to reach inside. The key is just what you allow after that contact point, because if you're able to lean so far in that it becomes an issue, then I think it's going to be a problem.
Mhm.
But I'd also like to see like do you have any videos of like you doing any of this stuff?
No, but it's pretty. I think I can contact it from my. I can have my toss be 3 feet away from the net, or like 3.5 feet away from the net if I'm serving from 6 feet, because I'm getting like a good foot and a half from my waist to my shoulder, and I'm getting a good at least a foot from my arm, and then I'm not losing balance.
Hmm.
So I'm realistically serving the ball from 3.5. Granted, it sucks. I can't cut it. It goes dead straight. It's not that fast. But
Right.
if I had an extra, foot, if I was a foot taller, then I think I would be able to cut it and it would be game over.
Now, after you hit is your first step inside the
No,
6 foot
no, no,
circle?
no. Yeah, because that's what Trip was saying, right? He's like, well, you can't have your foot go in. I was like, oh yeah, that's smart. But I'm still getting it, like you should try it. You can lean very impressively far without losing your balance. And like,
Yeah.
especially if you're leaning, kind of like, how people do a flango and they're leaning sideways.
Yeah.
Well, if you just lean forward and it looks so stupid, but I guarantee you there will be a lot of people who do that
Right.
if the toss doesn't matter. I think that would become like the new best serve, would just be like, how far can you lean without losing your balance?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's I think with any of these rules, like I think it's important to actually just spend time trying to break the rule that you're proposing or like break other people's rules because you're right. Like the meta will necessarily develop around some crazy, ridiculous tactic if it becomes that overpowered. And so
Hmm.
that was the entire point of pushing that toss back in the first place. Was Skylar was like, well, yeah, like right now that it just says at the point of contact, my feet have to be behind. So if I just toe the line and fall out of bounds like a wide receiver in football and hit the ball at the last second, that's legal. So we should probably change that. Simplest way to do that, toss outside 6 feet. So maybe we need to write something that, is more than 2 sentences in order to accomplish that. But
Yeah.
but I think but I think we can. And that but again, like everyone should try to break everything because that's what so we did a thing in 2017, 2018. It was like before, no, it was after the Chicago Grand Slam. Before the Chicago Grand Slam? I forget. But Spikeball did a thing where they invited some people, like top players, to try out some other variations and gather some data. And one of the things we were trying out was like you can't hit or like you can't yeah, it was you can't set the ball from inside of 6 feet.
Oh, that's
So
kind of fun. Yeah.
so it was this idea of like, all right, you'll have to pass away from the net. This is going to eliminate two balls unless you're going to swing from 6 feet off, or and then it'll give defenses more time to read a set and be like,
Totally.
oh, I need to go to this side of the net. So makes a ton of sense on paper. You're like, wow, that's so promising. Well, immediately the idea was like, all right, so what do we do? So are you allowed to jump inside the circle?
Oh, yeah.
Are
Gotcha.
because the
And then just
question
be, it looked stupid. Yeah.
right. And so if you say no, you can't jump inside the circle, then any time that a receiver passes it forward inside the circle,
Then it's point lost.
then the
Yeah.
point's lost and everyone just stands there and watches the ball hit the ground and it's super unexciting. So we go, okay,
Yeah.
you have to let people jump in. So then it became like this whole thing of like getting a running start and trying to do like a jumping set over the net to your partner. And it was
And
like,
that's just like, it looks just stupid. Yeah. It's like, why wouldn't they just set from inside like a normal human? Yeah.
right. And so you can set off with all these great intentions and you can have these great ideas and in your mind it just makes so much sense. But then when you actually try it, you're like, oh, this is dumb. And that's
Yeah.
where like, even with this like 1 foot circle of like no hitting around the net, I'm just like, it's
Yeah.
just going to make people take these like running approaches to try and like do it in the air above the net. And if you don't
Yep.
allow
Yep.
that, then it's really boring. So like
Yeah, it would
you
increase rallies, but yeah, it would just
but
for
is
a
it the game
while,
you want to
for a while.
watch, you know?
No,
Like
it's
and
not
that's
it just looks stupid. Yeah, it's
right.
like why can't they go near the net that they're hitting on? Like it's just kind of stupid.
Yeah. Well, and
But it's fun. It's fun and it increases rallies. It does everything that we want, but it's not the change we want, I
right.
think.
It's just not the outcome or final product that you actually want. And so I think people just have
No.
to like take these things out to their logical end and also like try them and try to break it. Like that's the point. Like taking these like running jumps into the circle saved us all this time from being like, this is how we pictured it in our heads. And so if we just like played like that for 2 weeks, then we wouldn't have learned that. But like sometimes if you can break it in an instant, like that means you need to rewrite the rule until the game's not stupid, like from the initial jump. So yeah, like especially with like a lean in serve like that, like yeah, as soon like before we do anything like that, I would want to get Drucker, I'd want to get PJ, I want to get Preston, I'd want to get me, I'd want to get you, I'd want to get left-handed people, I want to get
Yeah.
I want to get a bunch of different people that do a bunch of different types of serves and just be like, hey, for the next 5 hours, like just try to break it. Like just try
Right.
to do something stupid and show that it's a legal serve and why we would need to like change this or make it better. Because yeah, like we don't want it to be like we don't want it to look stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, and as long as Spikeball goes through that process, they're gonna come up with the right rule change for next year.
yeah.
Do you
Well,
think they need a rule change? Do you think there needs to be a change this year? Because
uh,
I think there does.
so I think right now the main thing is we need a lot of testing. I think we need to try a bunch of different options. I think that we just need like we need a good rule change more than we need a rule change. And so
Totally. Totally agree.
I think that's important to focus on. In my mind, anything that would be implemented next year would have to basically just be an enforcement rule change. Basically something to the effect of like, we allow
Like
you to
pockets, yeah.
right, like our definition of a pocket, or we allow you to hit inside the 6 foot line now. I mean, I'm sure that would be coupled with moving it back. I don't think anyone is here to do anything like that. Like if we were just going to do something like that, I think we could do it quicker. But also then at the same time, if we move the serving line back to 6.5 feet or 2 meters, like you want to give teams enough time to actually like practice serving from that point instead of
Yeah,
being like,
true.
hey, February 15th, we're changing the rule and the first tournament is March 8th. Like
Yeah.
that'd be really dumb. So like you don't
Mm,
want anything like that. Like we already went through
no.
like the 2016 season, we changed nets in the middle of the season for Christ's sakes. Like that was not a bad move. Frankly, I'm shocked it wasn't more disastrous, but we got lucky that the pro set didn't suck. So
Yeah.
so that was good. But so I think anything that we do like that just has to be something less consequential and would have to come by the end of the year and be like, all right, we've approved this, and now you have from January until the tour series
Hmm.
starts. So one rule change that I'm looking into is playing around with a variation of like the volleyball blocking rules. Like I know
Oh
people have
yeah, and just yeah, you get the first touch, you can play it again. Yeah,
right.
if
So,
it's like instantaneous.
right. And so there are two variations of that. Like in indoor volleyball, it doesn't count as a contact. So you basically get four if you do something like that. Versus in beach volleyball, you can hit it again, but it counts as two. So
Okay.
I'm leaning more towards that one. But, you know, defining when you're allowed to do that and when it doesn't count as a contact versus when it does count as a contact is very, very different. So
Hmm.
I think that would be something that would buff defense. It would give defense more options to continue a rally.
Right, at the expense of gray area.
Right, but then the question is just like, so how much gray area are you inviting into this? How do you minimize that or eliminate it? So that's what I'm
Yeah.
kind of playing around with now with wording and stuff like that. And also like, just trying to make it so that it like we've already made it so that you can't play defense like within the cylinder of the net. So and that's for player safety, and I've been calling for that for 2 years. So I think that that's a good move. Um, but that's the equivalent of like the contact being above the net in volleyball. So
Totally, yeah, it's same thing.
right. So now what else do we use? Well, we could draw another circle on the ground. We could we could make some rule about the height of the ball. That seems weird, and even tougher to enforce, like more imaginary lines or imaginary cylinders. So I'm trying to use a 6 foot circle, but then you still
Okay.
have the 6 foot circle. So I'm still
Yeah.
writing all that stuff out. But something like that, I think would be something that we'd be able to implement a little bit faster.
Hmm.
But when people are like, no, you know what we need? We need this, 1 foot hitting circle that you can't go within. Like, we just need way more. Like, that's such a radical change to how the sport is played that we would need a lot more testing with it. And also, I think what people forget about that one too is like now in order to play like one of the selling points of spike ball was like set up your net and play anywhere, you know? And now it's
Yeah.
like set up your net, play anywhere, draw a 6 foot circle for serves, which like you could just estimate for the most part. Like half the tournaments we play don't even have lines, so like that's fine.
Yeah.
But like now you have this 1 foot circle that's like necessitating for every single contact that you make in order to
Yeah.
try and spike the
It's
ball off the
tough.
net. Like
Yeah.
that just seems like all right.
It's
Now
too
you
much.
right,
Yeah.
it's like too much. Like now you can't do anything. So something big like that is just going to require a lot more testing in my opinion, and you're going to need to really prove that this is like a good idea, and then you got to figure out like how do you do that. Like Preston's talked about like he used towels, but he's also said like maybe it's a mat, maybe there's a physical barrier. Like we did that thing with like inner tubes back in the day where we but like there was a tire like it was like a tractor tire that like went around the set, and it was like a foot and a half or something like that, so you like literally couldn't go up to the net to hit because there was something physically in your way. Like that to me was better. But then now do you sell a tire that you have to inflate
Yeah.
to go around a spike ball? Like,
Right.
and then how does that even look? Like one thing that's cool about the sport is
Yeah.
like,
It's simple. It looks cool. Yeah.
well, but it's like the spectacle of seeing 100 spike ball nets is really cool. What
Yeah.
is does the spectacle of that look as cool if there's a bunch of tires on the ground that are like
No, it's kind
covering
of
up
weird.
those nets? Like now it just looks like what the hell's happening here? Like to me, like that kind of kills the idea too. So I just think there are a lot of things to consider in these, and like so I've kind of classified. I intend to talk about this a lot more, but I've kind of classified like there's like level 1 rule changes, which are just like implementing something new. Like we rewrite the rules and you start playing that way, like sloppy first touch where it can go off your body twice off the first contact in one
Hmm.
motion. We just start playing that way. All we have to do is decide that's a rule. It's a rule. Then there's rules like that have um, which would be like level 2 but like require more like observers or like tougher to self officiate. So if if you put that 1 foot circle on the net, like now it would be tough if both of us are on one side of the net playing defense. I don't know whether you're in that 1 foot circle on the other side, like I can't see it. So you probably need somebody watching the match. Do we have the willpower to be able to like have that many people, observing? That we've proven we don't thus far. Can we
Yeah.
implement a cultural change around it? Sure, but I haven't seen the appetite for it yet. And I think with the right rule change, maybe that's possible. But that becomes like level 2. So like level
Yeah.
2, it's more difficult. You still need more things, or it's going to necessitate more lines on the field, or more this, more that, more setup. And then level 3 is full on equipment changes. And I think that like something like level 3, you can't implement by next year. Even level 2, I don't think you can. Level 1, yeah, I think you could, but it's got to start happening real quick because I think you'd have to have that rule written and approved by the community and the board by the end of the year. So, um, like, I think there need to be rule changes, but I think we need to be investing a lot into
Yeah.
options that are mostly going to come up in 2021,
Yeah.
2022.
Too. Yeah.
God, I don't know
Yeah.
what year it
Makes
is
sense.
anymore.
You're good. Yeah. I would love them to take some sort of. I mean, there has to be a sense of urgency, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So yeah, I want thoroughness, definitely, but yeah, I want quickness to be emphasized as well. Like I don't want
right.
them to, be scared. I want them to, do the testing, find the results, be bold in it, like, and just send it. Whether that's a bigger ball, whether that's a different net, I don't care. like rule change, whatever. Just as long as it, yeah, as long as it makes rallies more frequent, as long as it, doesn't have a crazy impact on the way the game is played, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think the appetite's there. Like before, I was like, "Don't touch it at all." I think we need to. I think we need to do something. I'm still on the lower end of that. I'm more on the like level one changes in my mind, but
I agree. Yeah, something small. Yeah.
I mean, there's appetite all across the community for sure. I mean, you see them all on
Hmm.
on Facebook. They're vocal, and then, but like even all the way up to Jack Scotty. Like so David Luis put together a group of people that were interested in like
And the
heading up,
stats team, yeah.
right, yeah, stats team and testing rule modifications and writing some rule modifications to try and stuff like that. And I was actually just on a call with him yesterday and a bunch of other people that were interested in it. It went really well. He seems like he's like really organized this pretty well, and so
Hmm.
we're going to pursue a couple of different options, and we're kind of coming up with what those are and then writing those out. But Jack hopped on the call um, yesterday as well and just kind of talked about like where we've been with testing rule modifications, things that have like seen some promise, seems that
Yeah.
things that haven't. He said throw everything on the table here, but he even said at one point that like this 1 foot thing around the circle, there was no appetite for that in 2016 or 2017, but there's a lot more of one now. So like something that radical, like we would just have to prove that it's really the right way, and we'd have to
Hmm.
see what does that high end look like
Right.
before we commit to something that big.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's like go out there and prove it. Like you like if I just on the record, like I hate the idea of a 1 foot hitting circle, but if whoever feels passionate about it, go out and do something. Go write the rule, start playing it, encourage a bunch of other people to start doing it. There are tons of people that want to. Go out there
Yeah.
and
I've played with it tons.
right,
Yeah.
like go out there and prove concept, get some people excited about it and prove to us with some video like why this needs to be the future. Like the board's very much listening right now. And like given the right things, like I'd vote for it if the product ended up looking a lot better.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that it will. And this is what we were talking about too. Like, I think that, we all need to come together as a community to try and push these things forward. But you also like really need people that believe in the rule change to test it, because
Hmm.
I don't want to play rule changes that I don't think are great and
Yeah.
then
Totally.
skew the results towards like, oh, this is stupid, it doesn't work, and then like,
Right.
like
Right.
ruin it. So you know, if you feel passionate about it, like get out there and do something, people. Like create that
Hmm.
rule change you want to see. Like I'm currently writing the rule change that I want to see, and I'm gonna put together a group of people and test that thing out, and there will be a YouTube video on it explaining everything and explaining, the thought process that went into it. Like put in the work and do something and band together with other people. You don't have to do it by yourself. Like I know a lot of people don't have a zillion hours to sit around and do this. They don't make content for a living like I do, but you know, if you and 20 friends get together, you can accomplish what I can accomplish faster than I can. That's for sure. So,
Right.
yeah, I just want to encourage people to do that as well.
Yeah. And one thing that Carter said was he was talking about removing bias when we look at these rule changes in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been realizing that I'm like kind of guilty of that, right?
Well, I mean, we
I
all
think
are. I mean, we're
we're
humans. Like, there's
all,
so much
yeah.
bias in you, and you gotta actively fight it.
Yeah, I know. And I'm actually just realizing now that yeah, all sports, almost all sports favor tall people. So it's my natural bias to say, "Oh no, no, like leave the toss rule," right? Cuz like I'm
Right.
short. That's bias. Now that I think about it, like maybe for the best of the sport 20 years down the road, like we want like the athletes, the tall people to have that slight advantage cuz I don't know, that's how most sports end up being. Um
Right. There's just
what
like
I'm just
ends
saying is
up
I was
being an ideal.
biased.
Right. Like there just ends up being an ideal height thing. Like, when they do
Yeah.
those things on, during the Olympics about how like Michael Phelps is like the like perfectly genetically modified human. Like if you're gonna build a swimmer, it's him because he's
Mhm.
exactly 6'4", but his wingspan is 6'6", like, and that makes it
Yeah.
like, and that, but like that, and his feet are a size 13, which is better than a 15. Like, it's just like sometimes it gets down to that level, but it doesn't mean that no one else can swim. Like it just means that
Right.
like maybe Michael Phelps just has a natural advantage, and that's okay. And we
Right.
should celebrate that at some point. Um, so that's yeah, but like I think that's important too. And like again, if I've had to combat this too. Like when the cut serve was coming out, I was like, well, this is stupid. This is literally something I can't do given my serve. Like I can't cut it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Totally.
that doesn't that doesn't work. So like I could either, argue for my own sake that like, you know, yeah, like there shouldn't be cut serves. All those things should be called
Yeah. Call him
pockets.
a
Like
throw or a
right,
throw.
right, or call it a carry. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not what it is. And it's cool that other people are able to do some cool stuff. And maybe 3 years later, I'll start dabbling with it and pick it up. Like, and that's
Yeah.
and that's where we are. And like that's okay. Like it's okay to create a rule change that doesn't support, you know, your specific skill set. Like buffing defense right now doesn't help me at all. Like, I, I you know, I'm not a super highly defensively focused person. I'm not sitting there going, I need to play defense even more. Um, that's not the point. Like, I think that's a better idea than everything else, just based on what the community is doing, what the community needs. So like, yeah, you got to kind of remove yourself from it a little bit, and you know, advocate as if you were someone else. Advocate as if you were Tyler Chiswick. Advocate as if you were PJ for a rule change. Like, try that out for a little bit.
Yeah. For real. Yeah. It'd be a little different. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Any hot takes for
Uh,
next year, assuming that there is a next year?
oh man. I think. Hot take is that half of the people in the top 10 right now will still be in the top 10 by the end of next year. Bam. There we go. I got,
That's clean.
at, yeah, at least 10 players who are like not even in the top 15 right now or like top 20 will find themselves in the top 10 just because I think this offseason there's been more growth in like younger player development than ever before.
Wow. And that's big too, because like even back in the day, like Caleb came up through that number 4, but he was always on people's radars, and he just slowly
Yeah.
went from like 50 to 40 to 20 to
Yeah.
15
And
to,
then
and now he's
there he is.
4 or whatever he
Yeah.
is. But
No, I
you
got
think it's
like,
gonna happen even faster? You think
oh yeah,
Ryder for top 10 or whatever?
Ryder, Jordan, Warren, like Spencer, like Ryan Marino, like you got, oh yeah, like the Modells are gonna be like right back to where
I
they
guess
used to
that I guess
be.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm probably, oh, Frederick, dude, Frederick's insane. Like
I know.
there's gonna be next year there'll be tons of people who were considered trash last year that are gonna be like God mode next year. So, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. So
Yeah.
that'll be sweet.
Well, it is a perfect storm for something to upend right now, because you got a lot of top players taking a back seat without a season right now, and
Yeah, and
that's what I'm.
they're in the dust. I think there's a ton of people who were really good last year who, like Preston and Ryder lost to Cade Oreo and Frederick Hinkle. Like let's just digest that for a second. Like that
Right.
that happened.
Yeah. Well, I guess that gets to another thing too, because like I think this is such an interesting thing as well, of like, be careful what you wish for, because people have been wishing for upsets to be much more common, because
And
it
now they
makes
are.
because it makes every single game like more watchable, like in the round of 16 when it's the 1 seed
Hmm.
versus the 16. It's usually not that exciting, but
Right.
like, yeah, like the fact that Cade and Hinkle can win that, like that's totally different than it ever was. People were so mad that like, oh, CS wins 99% of their matches, and Chico has this long reign, and like they lose 2 times in 3 years, and even the top 4 are pretty much guaranteed at every tournament unless they like majorly mess up in pool play. It's usually like their fault if they lose, more than it's another
Right.
team's ability to win. And now it's now that evening factor has happened. And frankly, like I think it started to happen. Like I go to the example of you and Warren in Utah
Yeah,
all the
that was
time.
like the first time it happened on a big scale, I
Right.
would
Well,
say.
and resulted in a win because there were, some teams they
Hmm.
like crashed top four, but then like, kind of whatever, or they had the bracket to get to finals and that was impressive. But like, I mean, you guys ran through everybody, you won, and it was this idea of like, no, if you're the hot hand, you can win. And
Yeah.
serving allows you to do that, but then people are mad about it. And so it's funny just cuz like yeah, like if you want to get back to like just simply like evening out all the skills, like you're gonna have less upset potential at the same time. Like I think people need to recognize there's a trade-off there, and
Hmm.
so yeah, I find that interesting.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. All right. Well, hot takes aside. Oh, I have to ask you because I need you on the record for this. I talked to you guys a little bit about it last year. Um, you guys got a pro division invite and turned it
We turned
down.
it down. Yep.
Tell me what
Why?
insanity got you to that point.
Oh, I can definitely tell you. It made perfect sense. It sucked. For one, that was like the hardest decision I had made in a it was very hard. No, it wasn't the hardest. It was hard. But the worst part about it is that the day that we finally told Nora that we wouldn't be able to go, we got the funding. And then a few hours later, like we had waited forever to tell her that we couldn't go.
Right.
Couldn't find funding, got funding because it was like the airport that was closest to the tournament was like really, it was going to be like $400 round trip. It was just like an
Right.
expensive airport.
That was the problem with
Even,
Virginia, that's for sure.
yeah, super expensive airport. But uh, we got the funding a few hours after we told Nora we couldn't go. And then we emailed her and she's like, sorry, I already gave your spot away. So that sucked. But that's not the only reason. The reason was not just funding. It was also our pool had boisterous. It had, which in my mind, honestly, when I was playing with Warren, I thought, okay, there's two teams in the world that I have a 0%, or like under 3% chance of beating. That's CS and boisterous. So I felt that me and Warren, if we were hot, we could have gotten third at that tournament.
Yeah.
But and like we proved we beat Spikers. Like we knew how good we can be when we were hot. We're both like very consistent players. So we but in our pool, so the best we could do is 2-1. If we went 2-1 in the round of 8, we would have had to play CS, assuming CS went 3-0 in their pool because the
Right.
pool is already set. So the best thing we could have done is T5. And then I thought, well, Warren, we can just like throw a game against David Gonzalez. I mean, obviously we might have lost that anyways. Totally,
No, sure, but you can
would have lost it.
intentionally tank.
Yeah,
That's a
intentionally
thing.
lost. Yeah, if it was game 3 or something, game 2, and we had already had a win, we could have forfeited that game. Then we would have had to play, depending on how the bracket worked out. In the first round, we would have had to play Flexual Healing or Moctega.
In the round of 16, all of a sudden, that would have been your
Yeah,
trade-off.
yeah, and if we lost every game, we would have had to play one of those teams as well because they were in the same pool.
Yeah.
So, and we're like, well, shoot, those are like
Those are like the
those are
forms.
brutal matchups. We don't even want to fly to Virginia to throw games. It just it was a bummer. I just hated our seed. I wished that we, for one, like everyone else in the world, I wished that we weren't in the same pool as Boisterous or CS. And secondly, I wish that we wouldn't have to play Boisterous or CS in the round of 8 if we performed to our maximum potential. But that's just how it worked out, and I wasn't willing to pay $400 to lose in the round of 8 or have to play a top 5 team in the round of 16.
Yeah, I mean that definitely gets dicey. I understand the like calculus behind it, and like I think everyone should be analyzing their bracket to that level of depth because yeah, if you need to tank, you need to tank. But um, I personally see no shame in that. I know other people do, but strategy is strategy. Sometimes you got to
Right.
lose to win.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
you don't want to play CS in the round of, I would rather lose in the round of 16, than know that I'm going to lose in the round of 8 to CS.
yeah, now my
Give myself a
message,
chance.
yeah, but like my message to you and Warren was just like Well, so what? Like, I mean, Skylar and I almost beat Moctega that day. Like,
True.
if you guys have been hot on your serves or whatever, like they weren't playing to like their full potential. It was like pretty clean ball, but they weren't like on some other level or anything. Like you guys could have won. Like you guys won a tour stop. You beat Skylar and I. You
Yeah.
beat you beat like 3 top 10 teams on the way to your victory. Like you definitely had a shot. So I
We
would
could have.
yeah. And
I
yeah,
won't
I
deny
mean,
that we could have.
yeah.
You're right.
I mean, it's
It
definitely
was a hard decision.
yeah. I mean, it's always a shame when it comes down to, funding and stuff like that, but I know a lot of people, wanted to be helpful there too. So it sucks that actually came through for you too and like 4 hours
Oh yeah.
afterwards,
At
but
the worst time, the guy was like, "Hey, I got the money for you guys." Yeah,
jeez.
we're like, "Well, sorry, dude."
Well, we definitely missed you there. Who did that make space for? Who made it all of a sudden
It was
instead?
I think it was either Addison or Patrick Chu. I can't remember.
It might have been
It was a Southeast team.
yeah. I can't remember. I think it might
Power sweep.
actually I think it was power sweep because didn't didn't Chew and
Get second. Yeah, I think
yeah,
they
yeah,
did.
I was gonna say they got
Yeah.
an auto bid. That's how they got
Mhm.
in. And then we had our controversial match at Nationals.
Oh yeah, good
Lord.
times.
Yeah, good times, good times. Well, we missed you there, and that would
Yeah,
have been
I was bummed.
that would have been the last time I saw you, but unfortunately, it was Utah. So, and
Yeah,
now I'll have to wait like 93 years in order to play with you. My hot
I
take,
know.
my hot take for next season is that the beginning of the season will also be impacted by COVID.
Oh yeah.
That's my guess,
I
but
well,
I hope I'm
unless there's
wrong.
a cure. Unless there's a cure.
But even if so, like you gotta roll that out. You gotta get people to take it. I know that I think the latest polling that I saw was that 35% of the country said that they wouldn't take a COVID vaccine when it becomes available.
Wow.
So that already means that we're gonna have a tough time reaching herd immunity.
Yeah, sheesh.
Sometimes I just don't want to live on this planet.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel you there.
all right. Well, anything else you want to leave the people with?
Keep grinding. That's
Woo!
that's that's what this off season is all about. So yeah, and just have fun, keep playing. Spike ball's a fun game, so yeah,
Yeah, don't forget that,
roll with
people.
it.
Spike ball's fun too. We talk about some problems, but in the end, spike ball also gets to be fun.
It's so fun.
All right, we're doing a new thing on the show too. We're gonna end every episode now with a let's go from the guest. Your best one. Go
All
all
right,
out, belt it. Don't worry
all
about
right,
peeking. I'll fix it in post.
you're good. Here we go.
Just like you
Let's
won.
go.
Woo! Let's go, baby. All right. See you guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Of course.